Good morning, afternoon, or evening, my dear language learning master, and welcome back to the Language Input podcast, and specifically to episode number 16 today, in which we're going to talk about, the best resources in order to learn a language for intermediate level speakers or intermediate learners. Okay, and well, before getting started, as usual, feel free to leave your comments down below if you're listening to this on YouTube or any platform where you can leave your messages on your opinion on this specific topic, any questions, ideas you may have for future episodes as well, So yeah, thank you in advance for that. And yeah, let's get down to business with today's episode. And well, first of all, before talking about the specific resources that you can use in order to learn a language when you're approximately at an intermediate level, I want to say that, within a specific level, there are differences, between people, and you might be intermediate, but you might be lower, upper intermediate, there are differences. So ultimately, the deciding factor is whether you can understand a specific resource or not. All right, so that's the most important thing. So of course, I'm gonna give you ideas according to what I think might be appropriate for an intermediate level, but ultimately it's gonna depend on you, right? On whether you understand what's going on in a story, a book, or whatever it is, or you don't. Okay, so just tell yourself the truth, and if you understand what you're listening to or reading, go ahead. Okay? Perfect. So with that being said, let's get down to the resources. Well, when it comes to classes, as I talked about in the beginner level, obviously, classes based on the right principles are always going to be helpful, of course, but to me, at this point, you don't really need them. Okay, like what I mean is, you already have access to different types of resources that you can enjoy on your own without the help of a teacher. Like the ones I'm gonna mention in a moment. But like I said, if you enjoy taking classes, if it helps you commit to your journey or whatever the reason, feel free. As long as they're based on comprehensible input and the right principles, it's all good, all right? And then when it comes to cartoons and comic books that I mentioned in the previous episode, the one about beginner resources, same thing. Like, you do have access to more complex materials, so you don't need to watch them if they're not that interesting for you. But again, reading comic books or getting exposed to the language with cartoons is still okay, because it's still comprehensible input that you're getting. But I perfectly understand that comic books are great in my eyes, but cartoons, maybe they might not be the most interesting resource for us adults. All right, but I just wanted to talk about that real quick. And so let's get now to the actual resources that I consider the most appropriate for intermediate level. Yeah, and one of them is documentaries. Okay, and I think they're extremely useful because they're usually they're usually easier than series and movies because of their style. All right, especially those with a narrator who sort of explain what's going on, or those nature documentaries or history documentaries in which there's a narrator explaining the story or what's going on, or describing the the landscape or whatever it is. They're extremely useful because, like I said, they usually speak slower than real life conversations in series and movies. They use a descriptive language, all right, which helps you understand what's going on. And then there, you can find documentaries for pretty much any topic, you can think about. So, whether you're interested in travel documentaries, history documentaries, geography documentaries, nature, animal documentaries, sport documentaries, whatever the topic, you're going to be able to find examples, Obviously, if the language you're looking to learn is Spanish or English, or, you're going to be able to find even more resources than less popular languages, right? But I'm pretty sure you can find a lot of them anyway. So that's one of the resources that I strongly recommend at this level. Another one is sport events. Yeah. And there are two main reasons why I think sports are really, really amazing when it comes to learning a language. First of all, they're usually tremendously interesting or even compelling to those people watching them, right? So if you're passionate about, football, basketball, soccer, tennis, or whatever the sport, you're not gonna need to find the free time in order to watch them, or you're not even gonna need effort, any effort in order to keep watching what you already were watching in your native language, right? And that can make a huge difference, I'm telling you. And the second thing is, the good thing about sports is there's a certain physical component to it that it really helps comprehension. Meaning that there's usually a commentator or, commentators in a sports event that most of the time, they're describing what's actually going on at the same time on the court, on the pitch, or, whatever it is. And that really helps you because you're listening to the explanation by the commentator and you're actually seeing the action at the same time, right? So it's easier to sort of connect or understand that those specific words, to understand what those specific words mean, with the visual action that is going on the court or the pitch, like I said. And that is, believe me, that is tremendously helpful. Actually, I've talked about it many times, but I learned English by watching the NBA mainly because I was interested in basketball. I wanted to watch the game, and I was listening to English at the same time, so it was like win-win situation, right? So if you're passionate about sports, if there's a specific sport that you're interested in or passionate about, believe me, it's gonna be huge. All right. Let's go on now with one more resource, which is language exchanges. And well, I'm not gonna talk in depth about this one because I already made an episode about language exchanges. You can find it on my podcast. And the reason why they're extremely useful is because you're gonna meet like-minded individuals who are looking to learn your native language, so you're gonna help each other, and it's gonna be interesting because you're probably gonna have common interests when it comes to languages and travel and so on. That's first of all, and then you can actually use the little trick that I talked about in that episode that you can just go back and listen to it. So the experience is even more relaxing and less stressful, and it's eventually going to help you in a better way, acquire the language that you're looking to learn. Great. What else? So we've got documentaries, we've got sports, we've got language exchanges. And then, once again, I talked about it in the previous one, in the beginner section. People around you, just your inner circle. If there's any relative or friend, that already speaks the language you're looking to learn, tell them to speak the language to you, and, following the same example that I talked about with language exchanges, if you don't feel ready to start speaking yet, that's totally fine. Just tell your friend or relative to speak the target language to you, and you'll reply in your native language. That's, we know input is the key to the entire process, so that's totally fine. All right. And now, and let's go with reading resources. Like I said, comic books are still a great idea, because there are so many different types of comic books, and you may even find a little more complex comic books than those I talked about in the the episode for beginners, right? So you can actually find other comic books that are more appropriate for an intermediate level, no problem. So if you enjoy them, if you like them, go ahead and continue to read comic books. Yeah. Then young adult books are also an excellent resource at this level. Again, I'm talking about different resources, but just pick any book up that you're interested in. If you can understand it, great, go ahead. If you can't, just get back to a simple book, or a less difficult book. All right, because like I say, it doesn't mean the fact that you cannot understand a specific book doesn't mean that the process is not working, or you're not talented for languages and so on. It just means you didn't get to the point yet, and you will eventually. Okay, so nothing wrong with it. But I believe young adult books are really interesting in this level because, again, they're a little bit easier to understand than quote unquote normal books, right? And I don't know, I've read all Harry Potter books in Portuguese, for example. You can read Narnia Chronicles or The Hunger Games. I don't know. There are thousands of them, right? And so I strongly recommend young adult books at this level. But again, any type of book that you think you're going to be able to understand and that you're interested in is good, all right? Comprehensible input. That's the key to the entire process. I'll talk about it over and over again. Okay. And then there's one more resource that, to be honest, I didn't use a lot before, for the reasons I'm going to talk about in a moment. But I believe it's really, really interesting. Like way more interesting than I thought. And that resource is podcasts. And actually, I didn't use podcasts a lot before because I thought the lack of a visual action, right, was going to sort of jeopardize my experience. So, it wasn't going to be that helpful because of the lack of visual action, right? But I've actually realized that because of that, podcasters or creators actually make a conscious effort to speak a little bit slower, to be really clear when speaking, right? And that's extremely useful. Believe me, extremely useful. And moreover, you can find podcasts on specific podcast platforms, but many of them are also available on YouTube, on that specific person's YouTube channel. And the good thing about YouTube, as I've talked about before, is that you can actually slow down the pace. So, if them speaking too fast is a problem, you can always go to the settings on the YouTube video and slow it down a little bit. You actually have like a whole spectrum, but you don't want to slow it down too much for it not to sound natural. When they talk like that. But I've seen it, and I've used it myself, mainly with Polish, and just slowing it down a little bit makes all the difference in the world. Believe me. So yeah, podcasts, and obviously I talked about it with documentaries, but podcasts. There's so many podcasts out there, and I love that, by the way. But so you can find podcasts about pretty much any topic that you can think of, right? But if you're feeling like you're still not there, you can actually look for them on YouTube and use that option to slow down the pace. It's gonna be helpful, believe me. Yeah. And finally, this is gonna depend on the language, of course, because you might not find that many resources if it's not such a popular language. But in languages like Spanish, English, French, Portuguese, you can actually, this is about both reading and listening at the same time. And what I've done at times is I've listened to an audiobook and I read it at the same time, okay? Or stories. You can, especially with English, there's so many channels about it, but I'm talking about resources in which you're listening to the audiobook or the story and you're reading the text at the same time, in target language only, of course, And the good thing about that is that's pretty much like using subtitles, but with the difference that, of course, it's always target language, all right? And the second thing is there's no visual action to follow, like in a series or a movie. So, your attention is not going all over the place, like I mentioned in that episode, right? And that way, actually, I get this question several times about reading in a foreign language when the pronunciation is not actually that, how to say it? Or when the pronunciation doesn't actually make sense when you read the actual text, right? Like the way you read it and the way it's pronounced is not really what you thought it would be, right? I don't know if this makes sense, but I don't know. To give you an example with the different vowel sounds in French, for example, or So, because many people ask me, should I start reading as soon as possible? Because with French, for instance, the way I'm reading it, it doesn't necessarily mean that word is pronounced that way. Or actually, there are many words were usually pronounced in a different way that you would think, according to how you read it. But that's when this idea comes into play. Like, you can actually read the book or the story and listen to it at the same time. And visually speaking, you only have to focus on the text and you can listen to it at the same time, which is gonna give you like both oral and written comprehensible input. Of course, that's the key again, as usual. And, at the same time, you're gonna get used to reading in the target language and you're gonna listen to those specific words at the same time. So you get to know how they're pronounced the right way, okay? And yeah, that was the last one. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope I gave you new ideas to continue to improve in your language learning journey, whatever the language is, And let me know in the comment section down below if it's possible, like I said, what your opinion on this specific topic is, whether there was a specific idea or resource that you found super interesting or super useful. And as usual, any ideas for future episodes, I'll be grateful as well. So with that being said, hope you have a good day, my dear language learning master, whatever you might be, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you. Bye bye.